We are discussing the general principles of what creates speed, and we're learning how to see these principles in action. We've discussed various aspects of how to create propulsion. We've discussed various aspects of how to reduce drag. And now we're going to talk about how to time everything to make things as effective and efficient as possible. So one, we want to use the best actions to get to the goals that we want. And we want to be able to see how swimmers time things so that they can use as little energy as possible. So there's 6 different types of timing that we're going to discuss. In this video, we're just going to discuss arm-to-arm timing, and that's freestyle and backstroke. How do the arms relate to each other? As you can see, then we'll talk about arm-to-leg timing, which happens in all the strokes, arm-to-rotation timing, which also happens in free and back, arm-to-undulation timing, which happens in butterfly and breaststroke, breath timing, and then smooth transitions between the different aspects of the stroke. So let's get into arm-to-arm timing. Okay, we are going to start with backstroke timing because it is the simplest. As compared to the other strokes, the timing in backstroke changes very little. Regardless of how fast swimmers are swimming, the timing tends to be very similar. A lot of this has to do with the structure of the shoulder, and there's only certain ways backstroke can be swum effectively, and that has to do with the rotation. We'll talk about that when we talk arm to rotation timing. But what we're just going to focus on now is the relative timing of the arms to each other, and we'll see that it doesn't necessarily change. So what happens here is as one arm enters, the other arm finishes the pull. And so they tend to move in relative opposition. The entering arm is a little bit ahead of the pulling arm. So you can see the arm is entered here, and then the stroke finishes right there. And so this is the basic timing that you see no matter what. If swimmers are swimming at 200, if they're swimming at 50, if they're just swimming aerobically, it tends to be pretty similar. The stroke rate does change dramatically, but the timing doesn't change very much. And so what's important is that the arms are moving more or less in opposition. You can see it right here on the left. As one's going up, one's going down. And then as one's going up, one's going down. And as the one arm is finishing, the other arm is in the process of setting up the pull. So as soon as that pulling arm lets go of the water, the other arm is able to engage on the water and keep propulsion pretty steady. And so that's what's happening in backstroke. There's not a whole lot going on. It stays pretty similar, and mostly swimmers just have to be aware that when one arm is pulling, the other arm is recovering, and they're kind of moving in opposition. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We'll take a look at it here underwater, and as the hand enters, and as it's setting up the catch, the other arm finishes the stroke. As the other arm is getting ready to catch, and it does catch, and then entry, and then that arm finishes, and by the time the catch is set up, that other arm has exited. So the arms are moving in more or less opposition so that propulsion can be maintained for as long as possible and as continuously as possible. And so as the one arm is finishing, the other arm is setting up the stroke, and once that other arm finishes, you've got this pull starting to act here and get on the water. So that last video was from a 50 backstroke, and we'll take a look at this as a 200 backstroke. So as we see here, the hand is just finishing here, and the catch is just getting set up, and then hand finishes there, and then it's finishing the stroke right as the catch gets set up. And so there's a pretty much continuous application of force here, and it's the same thing in a 50 and a 200. The timing is very similar. So as the catch gets set up, right as the hand exits, and so that right when that hand comes out, applying a force backwards on the water, getting ready to go. And so even in a 200 and even in a 50, the arm-to-arm timing stays pretty similar because that's the most effective way to swim backstroke. On the other hand, when it's time to talk freestyle, things get a little bit more interesting. There tends to be a very dramatic change in the arm-to-arm timing as we move from slow speeds to really fast speeds. And so what tends to happen is there tends to be more of an overlap timing. And as you get faster and faster, the arms actually start to move in opposition more, whereas when you're swimming slow, it tends to be an overlap. So watch this athlete here. This is a 1,500 meter race. You can see the hand enters right as he begins to start the pull. And so then the arm pulls, and then the other arm enters as he starts to initiate the pull. And so there's an overlap. Both hands are in the same area. They're both in front of the body at the same time. And there's an overlap between the timing. The arms are not moving in opposition. And so what happens here is from this point, he's let go of the water until probably about right there, there's no application of force. And so there's a gap between the propulsive forces with the arms. And we'll watch again here. He finishes the pull here, and now he's just finished it there. He's yet to do anything with the arms, and right there, now he's starting to apply force back onto the water. So there's a gap between the strokes. And so what happens as swimmers start to swim faster and faster, they start to reduce those gaps. And that's what allows them to swim faster. They do produce more force within each stroke, but in reality, they produce more force per stroke cycle because they simply remove the non-propulsive phases. There's no gaps, and that allows them to swim faster. So while they do apply a little bit more force with each arm stroke, the biggest difference is the change in timing that reduces those gaps. So we can see here, right here, there's a big gap, big gap, big gap, big gap. Now applying force, big gap, big gap, big gap, now applying force. So that's really efficient in terms of swimming a 1,500 meters or a longer race, but it's not going to be efficient when you're trying to swim really, really fast. Now, from a sprint perspective, if we watch that right arm, the swimmer in front of us, still applying force, you can still see he's still applying force, and he's starting to engage with that left arm. And so there's not really any gap anymore. There's no gap between the propulsive strokes. And so here, he's still applying force, Now he started to apply force with the right arm. And so there's much more continuity in terms of the propulsion with the arms. And now the arms are moving much more in opposition. So when one arm's in the front of the body, the other arm is in the back of the body. And that position switches. So arm in front, arm in back, and then arm in front, and then arm in back. So very, very elite swimmers are actually able to create propulsion with both arms at the same time. So you can see here, he's still creating propulsion with that left arm, and he's already started to do so with his right arm as well. And so that tends to be pretty rare. Less rare, of course, at elite levels, but you have to be swimming pretty fast to be able to do this. And so still propulsion, you can see that backhand there, and he's already doing it on the left side. And so those are the primary changes in timing from an arm-to-arm perspective. With freestyle is that you have gaps where there's no propulsion, and as swimmers start to swim faster and faster, those gaps tend to shrink more and more and more and more. And so you go from a catch-up stroke or a hip-driven stroke or whatever else you want to call it, and then you move to an oppositional stroke where the arms are moving opposite, or some people call it a shoulder-driven stroke. It's the same basic idea, is that the timing of the arms change. And if we go back to the freestyle here, that timing happens because there's a pause in the front of the stroke. Right there, instead of applying force right away, there's a pause. And so the stroke itself is pretty similar, but it's that pause that allows for that gap in propulsion. And as swimmers start to swim faster and faster, you can see there's almost an immediate engagement in the water, and that's what allows for the different timing. And so the key concept here is that while swimmers do apply more force with each stroke when they try to go faster, the other, and probably the primary way that they increase their speed, is they reduce those propulsive gaps. And whenever they reduce those propulsive gaps, the average force per cycle starts to go up because you get rid of the dead spots. And even if you're applying the same forces, you're going to go faster. And so especially in freestyle, that's how speed is created, through timing. And so it's not always just more effort, it's better timing and a change in timing that creates speed. And they can do that, and swimmers can do that just by shifting the arm-to-arm timing. And that's why it's so important to learn how to do that effectively, especially in freestyle. Backstroke, it's not quite as much as a problem. There are other timing issues that we'll talk about later when people try to go really fast. But the arm-to-arm timing tends to stay pretty consistent in backstroke. In freestyle, when swimmers aren't able to manage this effectively, that's when they really struggle to create speed. So understanding how the arms relate to each other and how that changes as swimmers try to go fast is really important aspect of timing. And when you can see that, and you can start to understand it happening in your athletes, and you can see where some athletes are struggling to make it happen, now you can start to create interventions to address that. Hopefully you can see that. It's not super complicated. It's pretty simple. It's just a matter of changing the timing to the arms in order to create speed. And when swimmers can do that effectively, they're more likely to swim fast when they want to. So now we're going to talk about arm to leg timing, which takes place in all strokes. It's pretty important in freestyle and backstroke, and I'll show you why that is in a second. And it is extremely important in breaststroke and butterfly. However, that doesn't mean that timing is really complicated. That is not the case. However, that doesn't mean that arm to leg timing is complicated. It's actually really simple. It's just a matter of helping swimmers feel how to do it and how to execute it, especially when they get tired. Well, when you're watching it, it really seems like a whole lot's going on. There's usually just a couple key points where things have to be synced up pretty well. And when they are, good things happen. So let's take a look at it. So in freestyle, what is happening here with the legs and the arms is that the legs can help to transition from one side to the other. And so we'll see here, this athlete is swimming with a 2-beat kick. And we'll watch as one arm enters right there. You can see that opposite leg flicks there. And so when the left arm enters, it shifts the body to the left. When the right leg kicks, it pops the right hip up right there, and that further shifts the body to the left. And so when those two things happen at the same time, it's going to make it a lot easier to flip from one side to the other. We'll watch the same thing happen on the other side. So right arm enters. You can see that left leg getting ready to kick. The hip is down. And then, boom, they both happen at the same time. He pops over to his other side. And so it's a really easy way to get a good rhythm, and it makes it much easier to transition from side to side. So if you notice, when he's pulling is when he's rotating to that side. So if he pops the leg, and that helps him get a little momentum for his roll, it's going to make it easier to get through the arm pull. So it's all about efficiency, using momentum, helping to use as many different aspects of the stroke as possible to shift from one side to the other, rather than trying to use muscular effort or trying to force it. It just makes things a lot easier. And so when swimmers get that timing down, they tend to swim a lot more efficiently and a lot more effectively. So now we'll take a look at it at speed. And so this is when a guy's going 142 at the 100 freestyle, so he's moving pretty fast. So what we'll watch here is his right arm's about to enter, and you can see that left kick has flipped up, and boom, left leg kicks, he gets onto his right side. And he's doing a 6-beat kick here, so that same rhythm's still there. It's just happening. Those extra kicks are layered in on top of it. Now his right arm's about to, or his left arm's about to enter here. You can see that left kick getting ready to go. And then boom, he switches over to the other side. And so right there, he's kicked, he's transitioned, and he's got that arm entering the water there. And so it's the same idea. It's just the legs are being used to help facilitate the rotation so that nothing else has to make it happen. So right, boom, right there, and then right there. So not super complicated, but that's all it really is. If swimmers can learn how to feel that and learn how to do that, they're going to be a lot more effective, because their kick is going to be helping them transition from different phases in the stroke rather than just pushing them down the pool. It can do both, and when it can do both, it's going to be a lot more effective. So now we'll take a look at the same thing in backstroke, and what we'll see is the swimmers are using the same basic strategy to help facilitate that rotation. It's just on the back. And so the left arm is here, and so he's on his left side, so he needs to get to his right side. And so if you watch the right leg, right here, it's kicking through. It's going to push his right hip down, which is going to push the left hip up. You can see he just switched there. You can see that right leg is pointed straight up because it's doing that full kick. And that's going to pop the right hip down, the left hip up, and now he's switching to his other side. And so we'll see it the same thing on the other side. He's on his right side here, and that left leg is kicking, and then it's just finishing that kick, and then immediately he starts coming back the other way. And so using the feet, using the legs as torque to switch the position of the hips, and they're doing it at the same time as when they pull, so that way they can get the whole body switching from side to side without having to physically pull the body across or try to torque themselves across. That's simply not going to work. And so by using two things happen at the same time, it makes it less stressful on each one of those. So the left hand right here is going to pop the body to the right, and then the right leg is also going to help facilitate the body movement to the right. So you can see that right there, and we'll see it one more time on the left here. So boom, that left kick has just popped his hip coming back towards us, right as the right hand finishes going the other way. Legs are used to help shift the body from side to side, and it happens within a 6-beat kick in backstroke. It can happen with either a 2-beat or a 6-beat kick in freestyle. It makes the transitions a whole lot smoother, and it makes that stroke a lot more efficient because swimmers don't have to work to rotate the body. It just happens when the arms and the legs are working to do the same thing at the same time. Breaststroke timing. Now in freestyle and backstroke, if swimmers don't get that quite perfect, they can still swim pretty fast. You don't see many breaststrokers messing this up and swimming fast. And what it is, it's simple. When the arms are pulling, right there, you see how streamlined the legs are? They're not kicking yet. And then when the arms recover, they've completed their propulsion. Now the legs go. And you can notice right when he starts to kick, upper body's in streamline. And so whenever he's hitting the gas, whether it's his pull or his kick, he's not hitting the brakes. And if he was to try to recover the arms while he's kicking, it's like hitting the gas and the brakes at the same time. It's just a huge waste of energy. So we'll watch it again here. He pulls. Look how straight his legs are. When he pulls, he's finished his pull. And now he starts to recover the arms and the legs at the same time. And so he's not applying any propulsion right now. And so that's when he recovers the arms. And so now, once his arms are recovered, he's in streamline again. Now he's just started to actually create propulsion with the legs. And so it's arms and then legs, and then arms and then legs. And so this is an Olympic final. This is a guy breaking a world record. He's not holding back in 100. And so he's able to execute this separation at speed when going as fast as he can. This red marker is the 25 marker. You can see the time at the bottom. He's last 25. He's hurting too. And he's still arms, legs, arms, legs. It's simple. It's not easy to do, but breaststroke timing is pretty simple. It's just a separation of the arms and the legs, and it makes sense too. You're creating as much propulsion as you can with the upper body when the legs are streamlined, and then you're creating as much propulsion with the lower body as you can when the arms are streamlined. Now, this is a World Championship final. This is a 200. So he's in streamline. Now he kicks. And then legs are straight. Starts his pull. He has not recovered his legs. Look how straight they remain. Finishes his pull, and then he starts recovering his legs, and then he gets back into the stroke. And so in breaststroke, the difference between the 100 and the 200 is that there's more time between the arms and the legs. There's a little bit more separation, especially when the whole body's in streamline. After the kick, there's a pause before swimmers get back into the stroke. And so the arm pull doesn't really change. The leg pull doesn't change. The overall timing doesn't change. The space between the actions changes. And so that's where swimmers need to learn how to modulate that in order to swim fast. They need to change their arm to leg timing, not the how it's timed, but just the degree of the timing. And when they can do that well, then they can change speeds and do so efficiently. And so a lot of swimmers, when they try to sprint, what they end up doing is they just mash everything together and it just becomes a mess. And that's why you get swimmers that try twice as hard and swim the same time or even slower. So keep things separated, arms, and then legs. We'll watch one more swimmer here, just another sprint athlete. You can see legs just starting kicking, and she's in line. Arms pulling, legs are still in line. She just finished her pull, her legs are still in line. Back in front, kicking, arms are in line. And so again, it's arms and the legs, arms and the legs. How much space depends on the event swimmers are swimming, and it also depends on the characteristics that they have. If they have a really good kick, they probably can glide in front a little bit more. If they do not have a good kick, or they're swimming a sprint, they're probably not going to glide as much in the front of the stroke. And so that's how the timing changes. It depends a lot on the event, and it depends also on the swimmer as well. Simple, not so easy to do. But once we understand what's actually happening, it makes it a lot easier to go about finding ways to actually help swimmers learn these skills. Now, butterfly, also not particularly complicated. Also really important that swimmers get this right. And when they do, they can swim fast. And when they don't, they're really going to struggle. So we're looking at arm to leg timing. And so it's 2 key points. You kick, boom, when the arms enter. And then you kick, boom, when the arms exit. And the reason for that is simple. The kick gets the hips up. So the first kick, when swimmers have just taken the breath, they're pretty vertical, or they're certainly more vertical than they want to be. That's going to create more drag. And so they need to get back in line as fast as they can. And so that kick gets the hips back up when they were probably down a little bit during that breath. So if swimmers can get back in line at the beginning of each stroke, they're going to be much better situation. We've all seen swimmers that just kind of creep up. They get more tired. They stop doing the kick. They get more vertical. They get more vertical. They get more vertical. And it all just falls apart. And so that first kick is key to get everything back in line. And then here, boom. The kick needs to get the hips back up so the swimmers can actually get their arms up to the surface and then over the surface, as opposed to trying to drag them through the water. Because if the hips are low at that point, it's going to be nearly impossible to get the arms out of the water. And so that's why it's so key to do the kicks at certain times to get the hips up, to help keep alignment and minimize the disruption of alignment because of the arm recoveries in particular. That's what makes butterfly so difficult, is swimmers have to recover both arms at the same time out of the water, and they need to be doing certain things with the legs to minimize the impact of it. And obviously the legs do other things in terms of creating propulsion, but right now we're just focusing on the impact of timing. So boom, pops the hips up, pops the hips up, pops the hips up, pops the hips up. That's all the kick's doing, but if you don't do it at the right time, it's either going to wreck the arm recovery, it's going to make the arm recovery nearly impossible to do, or it's simply just going to create more drag because it's not getting swimmers out of poor positions. So different swimmer here, boom, 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 boom. And you can see the hips pop up, and you can see the hips pop up, and it's happening each stroke. And if those kicks aren't there, they're not strong enough, they're not at the right time, swimmers are going to really struggle to get the arms out of the water. So again, kick timing and arm timing is not complicated in butterfly. It's simple. However, getting swimmers to do it is a little bit more challenging. But if you have a clear understanding of what actually needs to happen, you can go about designing a plan, a program, activities, sets to help swimmers figure it out. If you're not clear about what it is, or you're focusing on little details that maybe don't matter, then it's going to be a lot harder to do that. So stay focused on what the key aspect of arm to leg timing is, and make sure that you're training that, developing that, and regardless of the stroke, it's going to help swimmers swim more effectively, more efficiently, and most importantly, it's going to help them swim faster. So be aware of what the key timing events are and figure out a way to help swimmers learn. Arm to rotation timing. And so there's a lot of different ways that people discuss this. To me, I think it comes down to something that's pretty simple, and that's if you try to get your arm out of the water without rotating, your shoulders do not have the range of motion to do that. So basically what rotation is doing in freestyle and backstroke is allowing for more range of motion in the shoulders to either recover the arms, particularly in freestyle, get a little bit more out of the stroke in freestyle, and in backstroke, putting the arm in a position where it can actually effectively pull. Because if you don't rotate, your hand can't really go under the water. And if your hand can't go under the water, you're not going to be able to pull very effectively. And so rotation is pretty much just making up for range of motion in the shoulders so that the arms can be positioned in ways that allow for effective recoveries and effective propulsive patterns. And so that's ultimately what rotation is doing. And we're going to take a look at how that manifests in both freestyle and backstroke. And as we'll see, freestyle and backstroke are pretty different in terms of how rotation actually works, in terms of the timing, and in terms of how it changes or doesn't change. So that is what we will take a look at today. So the first way freestyle is different from backstroke is that backstroke timing tends to not change very much, whether someone's swimming at an aerobic effort or whether they're swimming at maximal effort. And in contrast, freestyle timing changes pretty dramatically. You go from an overlap stroke where both arms are kind of in the same quadrant at one time to the sprint stroke where they're actually kind of in opposite positions throughout the entire cycle. So we're going to look at freestyle in terms of someone swimming a mile, and then also in terms of someone swimming a 50 freestyle, so we can compare those differences. And those represent the extremes. And then in between, you kind of see a transition from one to the other. So rotation timing here, the biggest thing to see is that rotation doesn't occur until the hand enters. And so the hand enters right here, and that's when rotation happens. And then on the other side, hand enters, rotation happens. And so the rotation happens after the arm recovery. And so when the arm is, or so when the shoulder's up, it's going to be a lot easier to recover the arm. And so it stays in that position. And then once it enters, that's when the body shift really happens. And so arm recovers, then the rotation happens, arm recovers, then the rotation happens. Now, what stays the same between freestyle and sprinting and in distance swimming is that the rotation of the body is tied to when the pull happens. And so as the pull happens, you're always going to see the body rotating there because that allows for the maintenance of hand speed and allows for a little bit longer pull as they go through. And so you see here the timing of the arm always tied to the timing of the rotation when pulling. And that's how the timing changes between distance freestyle and sprint freestyle, is that the rotation is delayed as the arm recovers, and then it enters, and then the rotation happens, but it always coincides with the pull. Now we'll take a look at sprint freestyle. And so you see here, the arm is pulling and he's rotating there. So again, the rotation is always synced up with the arm pull. But what's different here is that as the hand enters, he's already rotated to the other side. And so in this case, the rotation happens during the arm recovery as opposed to after the arm recovery in freestyle. And that's the primary difference in the timing. And so the reason that that happens is it allows the arm to start to pull right away. So instead of having to enter, rotate, and then pull, the rotation has already happened so that the arm can be placed into the water in position to pull immediately. And so you can see there's the opposite timing here. The arm is in the front, the arm is in the back of the stroke, and both arms are moving. Now the other arm's in the front, the other arm is in the back of the stroke. So again, the timing is pretty simple. Rotation happens during the pull, and then when sprinting, the rotation is also going to happen as the arm recovers over the water, so that when swimmers enter the water, they've already rotated. And that's in contrast to distance freestyle, where the arm recovers, it enters, and then they rotate forward. And that's also why swimmers are able to swim much faster with sprinting, because there's no delay in propulsion. So right here, you can see creating propulsion, creating propulsion, creating propulsion. And that left arm stops, and the right arm is already creating propulsion. And so it's much more continuous, and that's by changing the timing of the rotation, swimmers are able to do that. And then if we go back to the distance freestyle, so he just finished creating propulsion there. There's none, there's none, there's none, there's none, there's none. And now we start creating propulsion. So there's a gap in between those. And so that's the big difference between sprint freestyle and distance freestyle. The rotation is still tied to the arm pull. What happens in sprint freestyle is that the rotation happens as the arm recovers, so they can get right into it right away. And then in distance freestyle, the arm recovers, and then the rotation happens, which creates a little bit more of a pause in the stroke. So not super complicated. It's pretty simple. But if swimmers aren't getting that timing right, or they're using the wrong timing for the event that they're trying to swim, it's going to be more difficult and they're going to struggle. Now, backstroke. So, I want you to pay attention to this Nike sign on the swimmer in the middle. And so as you see here, he has just started to take his pull. That Nike sign hasn't moved at all. Still hasn't moved. Now it's moved, and he just finished his stroke. And so backstroke rotation is not continuous. It happens as the arm recovers and as the other arm finishes. But then during the pull, during the entire pull, there's little to no rotation. And the reason for that is because in order to get the arm in a position to create propulsion, due to the limitation of the shoulder range of motion, that shoulder needs to stay down. The body needs to stay rotated to that side a little bit so that they can get a really good pull throughout the entire stroke. And then at the last second, they rotate out of that so that they can switch to the other side and execute a really strong pull on the other side. And you can see is all of his back. You can see the tag on the back of his suit. It's not moving, it's not moving, it's not moving. And then it moves as he finishes the stroke. Now our Nike sign is back on our side. It's staying, it's staying, it's staying, it's staying, it's staying, it's staying, and then it rotates away. And so again, backstroke rotation is not continuous. It's intermittent and it's violent when it happens. So he goes from on his side and then snaps over to the other side right away. And we'll take a look what's happening over the water too, and that's tied in. When that other arm, watch the arm recover here, or enter here, and snaps in, and that's also shifting from side to side. So backstroke rotation is not continuous. It's intermittent and it's violent. And so if swimmers are trying to be continuous, they're going to get themselves out of position to create propulsion with that arm. Again, he needs to stay on his side so he can keep that position. Just think about it. If he starts to rotate away, all that space in that armpit where he's closing down, where he's moving water backwards from, that's all going to disappear. And so by staying on his side, he can keep the muscles that are creating all that force lengthened. And that's what's really key in backstroke timing, is making sure that that rotation is delayed on that side so that they can get as much out of each stroke as possible. There the Nike sign switches. Now we can see the tag on the other side, and then boom, it switches at the end. Now, just to show you one more example, she's on her side. You can see she's not moving, she's not moving, she's not moving. Pulls all the way through, still hasn't rotated, and then switches. And now stays on her side, and then switches. So there's a delay. So there's a delay so that they can create as much propulsion as possible. And they have to delay that rotation because the shoulder isn't equipped to get behind the body. And this is the only way they can get the arm deeper and lower so that they can get a great pull. And so we'll take a look at it over the surface. As you can see, when the hand enters, that's where that rotation happens. And so that's coinciding with the finish of the other stroke. And then they smash over to the other side, and then they get quickly over to the other side. And so those two actions are happening at the same time. They're staying on their side, and then when they finish the pull, that's when the hand enters, and that throws them from side to side. And so, again, it's an intermittent rotation, but it's a violent one, and that's what allows swimmers to swim really fast, is because they can quickly shift from position to position so that they're not spending any time not creating propulsion. Because if they're able to stay on one side as long as possible, they need to quickly get over to the other side as fast as possible so they can create propulsion with the other stroke. So the arm to rotation timing in both strokes is ultimately pretty simple. It's to make up for the lack of range of motion in the shoulder. So in freestyle, you can't recover the arm out of the water if you don't rotate. And in backstroke, you can't pull with the arm under the water if you don't rotate. And then in freestyle, the rotation also has the benefit of helping athletes get a little bit more out of each pull. And then in backstroke, the rotation also has the benefit of allowing athletes to throw their arm over the surface and use that to help them to switch from side to side to make that rotation a little bit more efficient. So while it looks like there's a lot going on, it seems like it's pretty complicated. When it comes down to it, arm to rotation timing is ultimately pretty simple. And once we have a simple understanding of what it is, it makes it a lot easier to find solutions to help athletes learn these skills. Limb to undulation timing, specifically in breaststroke and butterfly, because those are the strokes where we see undulation. And if you'll see, there's a general rhythm of the body, which kind of goes up and down, and that's tied into when the arms perform certain actions. And that's because the precise timing allows for the maximization of propulsion of the limbs, and then also the minimization of resistance as the athlete swims through the water. And so those two things trade off of each other, and we want to find positions that create a lot of propulsion while minimizing resistance, and the undulation allows swimmers to do that. We'll take a look at what that looks like in the specific strokes. So we'll start with breaststroke here with the athlete on the right. And as he starts to take his pull here, you see he starts to rise up, and then everything kind of comes up with that. And then as he starts to come down, everything kind of follows along that path too. So that's the full stroke cycle. And what we're going to look for is how that allows for the optimization of propulsion and then the minimization of resistance. And so as he takes his pull here, by rising up out of the water, it allows him to get more leverage on the water and kind of push backwards. It puts his arms, his forearms in a better position to move water backwards. By arching the back, he can take advantage of the lats. It kind of shortens them, allows them to be in a position to create more propulsion. So he can use that to create propulsion. By rising up with the upper body and not allowing quite yet the lower body to come up, it keeps everything in line. And that's really important for minimizing resistance. And then as he shoots forward back, by following the wave back down, he's able to get the body back into alignment and then able to kick from a position where there's not very much resistance, so he's able to be in a much better line. And then the momentum of that wave, it travels to the hips, and you can see right there, the hips kind of pop back up to the surface. We'll take a look at that again. So right there, the hips kind of come back up to the surface, and that's really important because that also establishes the great body alignment that you see right there. And so if the hips aren't following that wave and coming back up over the top, the swimmer's going to be kind of moving through the water at an angle, and that angle might get worse and worse and worse. The swimmers get fatigued. So it's really important for that, the end of the wave, to follow them back over it so that they can get back into line with each stroke. And that wave over the top also allows for athletes to get a little bit better kick, because if the hips were moving down at that time, it's going to be a lot harder to get in position where they can leverage on the water with their feet and their ankles. And so that strategy allows them to get more out of the kick as well, because they're going to be in a position where the feet are a little bit lower than the hips, and that's going to allow them to get more leverage on the water as well. So the key points are that the pull is going to be more effective by coming up a little bit, starting that wave of undulation, and then allows that swimmer to get more out of the pull by putting the arms in a more advantageous position, and also putting the muscles of the back in a more advantageous position to create force. And then the swimmer can use the downside of that undulation to get out of that position of resistance, drive forward, and that's going to help them get the hips back up to the surface, as you just saw right there. And so that's why the undulation can be really valuable, because it allows swimmers to get more out of their pull. It puts them in a better position to get a little bit more out of their kick, and it allows them to get back into line after they take that breath, and they most definitely have to take that breath because they need oxygen. And so by using a little bit of a wave action and timing it correctly, swimmers can take the breath, actually take advantage of the breath by getting more out of the pull, and then getting back into a good alignment by driving back down on the downside of that undulation, getting the hips back up. So that's an example of how doing everything well and doing everything at the right time can allow swimmers to get more propulsion while minimizing the cost and minimizing the resistance that they create as they move through the wall. So we'll take a look at it. Same thing with a different swimmer. You can see here, there's that leverage by driving the upper body up, allows a better squeeze of the pull, more propulsion. And then by diving back down, the hips are able to come up right there. You can see them pop right back up to the surface. So right there. And that allows this athlete to get in a much better line. And she's swimming at a very high tempo. You can see that there's zero pause, zero hesitation, but still, same basic concept as the last swimmer we saw who was swimming at a much lower tempo. By timing it right, by letting that wave travel through, the hips are going to pop back up to the surface. The swimmer's able to get a breath, and they're able to get a really strong pull by arching the back and really squeezing. If that concept doesn't make sense, try to really round your back over and then try to pull and then arch your back, and you can just feel the squeeze that you get from that. So you're combining the breath, but you're taking advantage of the breath to get more out of the pull, and then you're using that momentum, the wave that's been created to dive forward. Then you're using the momentum of that wave that's created to dive forward, and that's going to allow the hips to pop right back up to the surface, and that's going to create a much better line to move through the water. Ultimately, not super complicated, but if done well or if not done well, it can have a major impact on performance, a major impact on speed, and a major impact on how tired swimmers get, because if they're not getting the advantage of the pull from the breath, they're going to have to work a lot harder to create the same amount of propulsion. And if the hips aren't coming back up in the line every time, they're going to be creating a lot more resistance as they move through the water. So now we're going to take a look at butterfly. It's going to be a similar dynamic as in breaststroke. So the pull here, you can see that arch. That allows you to see all that space in the armpit. She's going to squeeze that back into her body, and that's going to give her a lot of pull. And by coming up a little bit, that's going to get her more leverage on the water. And she's obviously going to have to take a breath too. And so you can see that the wave is starting to go up here. And now by driving back down, she's getting back into position. And then by kicking the legs at the same time, that's going to pop her hips right up into the surface. And so the wave goes up during the breath, and then it comes back down. By timing the kicks with that, it's going to make it a lot more effective. The wave is going to travel a lot better. And by doing it at the right time, the effect is magnified. And so there's going to be some sort of wave action when she comes back down after the breath. And there's going to be some sort of wave action when she kicks. But if she does both at the same time, the effect is magnified. And so this is a 100-meter race. Look, hips right up at the surface. And she's probably not having to do much to make that happen in terms of adjusting her hips. It's happening as a natural consequence of the kick and the drive through in the front of the stroke. And so the press here in the front of the stroke, that also helps get the hips up. And so the arm recovery, the press in the front of the stroke, and then the kick timing is all helping her get back in line and taking advantage of the undulation that's coming from returning from the breath. And she's adding to that momentum by further pressing the chest and kicking the hips. And then that's going to make the effect of the wave even more significant. And because managing alignment and butterfly, keeping the hips up is really difficult to do. Whenever you can use anything to add to that skill to make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit more effective, that's going to be really valuable. So this stroke doesn't have a breath, but the same dynamic happens. You can see leveraging up through the pull and then recovering the arms, and then the wave comes back down and she still drives forward, still recovers the arms aggressively and kicks the hips up. And so that wave allows her to get more out of each stroke in terms of propulsion, and it also allows her to minimize the resistance that she creates by getting back into alignment with each stroke. And this is an example of ultimately why timing is so important. It allows swimmers to get more out of each pull, and it allows them to minimize the resistance that they create. So we'll watch another non-breathing stroke here, and she still comes up. And just try to imagine if she had tried to stay really flat, she's not going to get the same amount of power into the water, the same amount of force into the water. And that's why that undulation, even if it's not as much with the breath, it's still going to be important so that she can create leverage. And likewise, she's not coming up out of the water as much during the arm recovery because she's not breathing, but the same action needs to happen to get the hips back up in a position so that, again, she can create more leverage in the water by coming up. If the hips were never up, she wouldn't be able to come up with the pull. And so that simple up and down motion is going to be really important for, one, allowing for more propulsion with the upper body, and two, allowing for better alignment with the lower body and the hips. More propulsion, less resistance. That means more speed, and that's what we're ultimately looking for, and that's why great timing is so important. So another key aspect of the undulation to limb timing in butterfly is the recovery of the arms. So because the chest has lifted to start that upwards undulation, that upwards rotation, the shoulders are going to be up out of the water, which is going to allow for a fluid and effortless arm recovery. Most humans do not have the ability to pull their arms behind their body and then move them forward. And so if swimmers were flat on the surface, they either are going to have to drag their arms through the water, or they're going to have to possess some pretty impressive mobility. And even in that case, they're going to have to then drag the arms over the surface. And so by lifting the chest, starting that undulation, it makes it a lot easier to recover the arms. And then the momentum of the body can come back down from that, and the undulation can pass through the body, and that can get the hips up back to the surface to get back in line, having lost a little bit of alignment, to lift the chest, to breathe, and recover the arms. So a key aspect of undulation and limb timing is, again, the recovery of the arms. If swimmers are a little bit early or a little bit late, it's going to be a lot harder to recover the arms over the surface, and it's going to take a lot more effort to do that. And with butterfly, the more effort you spend on the recovery, the sooner people are going to get tired, and that's going to really slow them down. The undulation can be really effective for helping the arms recover, and when that happens effectively, and when it happens efficiently, it's going to help swimmers swim a lot faster. So we'll take a look at the same thing with an athlete swimming the 200. And this typically you see a little bit more undulation, but the same basic principles apply. So pressing the chest, hips come up with that kick after the arm recovery, and then arching the back, lifting to come up for the stroke. It's the same basic thing. Timing with the press in the chest, the undulation, go down with the front, come up with the front, and then again, go down with the front, and then again, come up with the front. So it allows for more propulsion right here, and it allows for better alignment right there. And again, more speed is going to come from more propulsion and less resistance, and that's why the timing of the undulation is so important, because it allows swimmers to accomplish both without sacrificing either. Breath timing and what can happen when it's not done at the appropriate time, and the general strategies for breathing correctly at the right time. We'll take a look at freestyle, breaststroke, and butterfly. So the general idea is that swimmers are going to want to breathe to the side that they are rotating towards and away from the arm that is recovering over the water. And so athletes doing that here. So the reason is when the body is rotating to the side, gives the neck a little bit more range of motion, and that allows swimmers to get the head clear of the water without disrupting their alignment in the water by having to either lift the head up or pull the head to the side. And so good breath timing is going to help everything go straight through the water, which is what we ultimately want. And so the mistake you can make is you can see swimmers so this athlete's breathing and get the head out before the hand enters. Some athletes have entered the hand right here, and they haven't even really started to breathe yet. And so then they take the breath here, and they're going to get stuck, and they're going to have to wait on their side, and the whole timing of the stroke is going to get messed up. And so another thing to watch here is, so this athlete will take that breath here, and what she does not do is wait for that recovering arm before getting that head back down. So if we watch here, she takes the breath and the head's already back down before the arm's recovering. So sometimes with the timing errors, swimmers will watch their arm recover, and that's going to delay the head getting back into line. It's going to slow them down. And by the time that their head's back, they'll have to be engaging with the water with the other arm, and they're not necessarily in the right position to do so. So the key things are breathing as the arm recovers, and then trying to get the head back down before the opposite arm recovers. Another way to think about it is breathing as the arm pulls. So in this case, the breathing as the right arm pulls, and then getting the head back down before the right arm recovers. And that's going to help keep everything in line. It's not going to disrupt the rhythm of the stroke. It's not going to disrupt the pull, and it's not going to disrupt the alignment. And so the good breath is about what it doesn't do and the impact it doesn't have, and it should have as little of an impact as possible. Breathing with the pull arm or with the opposite recovery arm, and then getting the head back down before the same side arm recovers. So take a look at it here underwater. You can see breathing as that arm pulls, and then his head is back down before his arm recovers. And so you can see what he does a really good job of is he's staying in line here. He's not lifting the head. There's not really any disruption of lateral alignment, and that's going to be really effective. So breathing as he pulls here, and then gets the head back down prior to the arm recovering. And so those are the key skills with timing, is breathing with and through the pull, to take advantage of the rotation, a little bit extra range of motion that's available, and then getting the head back down before the arm recovers over the surface. So in breaststroke, what we're looking for is as the arm starts to pull, that's when the head needs to start to come up. And so mistakes swimmers can make if they try to breathe too early, what's going to happen is they're just going to push right down through the front of the stroke before they've set it up. It's going to really disrupt the amount of water that they can move backwards, and it's simply not going to be an effective way to lift the body up out of the water. And then the second thing is if they wait too long. So in this athlete, she's already started to come up to breathe. If she keeps the head down too long, it's going to negatively impact the pull. She's not going to get in the right position, and she's also going to be late to get the head back down because she started the breath so late. So getting the breath going right when the pull starts, not so much when the setup, but right here, she's really starting to execute the pull. That's when the breath starts to happen. She comes up as she presses through and down with the pull. And then as soon as she's up and she recovers the arms, then that's when the breath needs to come back. And so you can see here, there's no hesitation moving the hands forward, and that's going to allow her to get out of the breath right away. And so a mistake that swimmers can make, they get stuck right here at the chest, and they're just kind of hanging out, doing nothing. And that's, if the hands are still here, they're not going to recover the breath. So the hands need to get out of the way so that she or any athlete can get the head back down as quickly as possible. So not particularly complicated, just breathing once the arms get in a position to pull, and then recovering the hands quickly so that the head can get back down quickly and everything can get back in line. Because if she doesn't get back in line very well, the kick's right about to start here. If she's not back in line, she's going to be creating a lot of resistance when she kicks. As she does it here, she's creating a really good body line when she kicks, which is going to allow her to get more speed out of that kick. If she wasn't back in line, she'd be in trouble. So getting the hands out of the way, get back in line fast, and then getting the breath rolling once they get in a position to pull. Butterfly breathing is pretty similar to breaststroke in that once the athlete starts to pull, they're going to kind of lift up, come through, and then they need to get the head back down when the arms recover. Right there. And so the mistakes that swimmers can make is one, is if they try to breathe as soon as the hands go in, that's going to cause a problem because they're not going to be able to set up the stroke effectively, and they're going to shortchange the front of the pull because they're going to just start pushing down before that they get into this strong position here. So one, they're going to have a hard time lifting up to breathe, and two, they're going to compromise their pull. The second issue is if the athletes breathe late, that's also going to compromise their pull because they're not going to be coming up a little bit. It's going to reduce the leverage that they have out of the water. The other aspect of it is when the arms recover, the head needs to come back down and the chest needs to get pressed to get the hips back up at the surface right here. If that breath is delayed, the arms are going to be entering here, the head's still going to be out of the water. It's going to be a lot more difficult to get the hips up. And then that's when you start seeing swimmers start to swim vertical as they go through the water because they're not in a position to get the hips up. So an early breath is going to compromise the front part of the stroke, and it's actually going to make it more difficult to breathe because the swimmers are going to be pressing down too early. And then a late breath is going to compromise the pull because swimmers aren't going to be able to arch out of that and get a strong position. And they're going to be delayed in returning the head back down, and that's going to prevent them from getting the hips up. And so breathing can be really problematic because it can disrupt propulsion, it can ruin alignment, and those are two really big issues. And so it's not that rare to see swimmers that are really effective when they don't breathe, especially in butterfly and freestyle, and then they start taking the breath and all sorts of things start falling apart, and that's because the timing is wrong. It's not always that they have a bad breath, but if they're doing it the wrong time, it's going to be problematic for a whole lot of reasons that we've discussed here. So get the breathing right. It's going to improve their propulsion. It's going to reduce the resistance, and that ultimately means they're going to swim fast. We're going to talk about something that's a little bit less concrete, but I still think is really important, and that's the concept of smooth transitions and how that can influence timing. And the smoother the transitions between the different phases of the stroke, the easier it's going to be to maintain momentum of the arms, and that's going to further facilitate different transitions between the different phases of the stroke, and ultimately that's going to save swimmers energy and allow them to be more effective. So we'll take a look at what that looks like in the 4 strokes. We will start with butterfly. And so the thing to watch here is the momentum of the arms kind of carries the hands down a little bit, and rather than trying to straighten everything out and really trying to fight that, this athlete just kind of lets them bend a little bit on entry, and so the momentum gets things into position. And the biggest thing here is watch how the athlete does not finish the stroke. So that's where the back of the stroke is. The bubbles are a little bit in the way, but you can see that the arm is not straight. And so what that's going to allow is it's going to allow the swimmer to easily recover the arms because the momentum of the arms is just kind of continuing to move backwards. And then by rounding it out, she can keep the momentum of the arms and swing them over the surface. If she were to extend the arms here, right, so you can see right there, they're still bent and they pretty much stay bent through the exit of the stroke. If she were to push back until they were straight, now the arms have no momentum and she's got to literally lift her arms over the water and try to recover them back to the front of the stroke, which is going to take a lot more energy. It's going to happen a lot slower. So by smoothing the transition between the different phases, she can get into the pull a little bit more effectively, and then she can get out of the pull more effectively and into the recovery more effectively, which is going to save her time, and it's going to save her energy. And by this point in the stroke, pushing back all the way is going to get her very little propulsion, so she's not really losing out on anything. So an example of how smooth transitions can really help with the timing of the stroke by preserving momentum, and that allows her to transition into different phases a little bit easier. So if we watch backstroke here, what the athlete will do is as they finish the stroke, they push down towards the back of it, and that allows them to push up with the elbow and the shoulder, and that gets the arm moving already out of the water. So the transition is a little bit easier to manage. And so instead of just pushing straight back and then trying to lift the arm out of the water, swimmer pushes down, which pushes the upper arm up, and then they have the momentum of that arm swinging all the way through. And the other thing it does by pushing down, it helps to facilitate the rotation to the other side of the body. And so again, rather than thinking in straight lines and pushing straight back and finishing the pull straight back, by having the pull go kind of down and to the side, it helps get the arm to move up out of the water. And it helps the body start to switch to the other side. So it's a key timing thing, and it's facilitated by what the arms are doing. And that allows for the rest of the stroke to flow with a little bit more rhythm and a little bit less effort. And the same thing here, when the hand enters, the swimmer's using the momentum of the arm recovering over the water to kind of drive into it and to get onto the side. And then the hand's just kind of in position and then round it over to get into the pull. So again, instead of thinking straight lines and pulling straight back right away, there's a little bit of patience, there's a rounding to get in position, and then they go. And again, finishing down a little bit, popping the elbow up a little bit, helps to facilitate the switch to the other side and help get a little bit of momentum to recover the arm over the water. So smooth transitions between the different phases allows for less effort, and that's ultimately going to improve their endurance. Now with breaststroke, they have an interesting challenge because they have to pull back pretty hard, but they also have to cut the stroke off to start the recovery of the arms. And so what you'll see here is the stroke starts to round around. So instead of pulling straight back, everything's kind of coming around and in. If athletes pulled straight back and then they tried to recover the arms, they'd really struggle because they'd have no momentum and they've got to drive everything forwards from a really far back position. So again, smooth transitions from the beginning of the stroke here into setting up the stroke and then the pull back into the recovery. Everything's pretty rounded, and that allows them to flow from phase to phase, and it allows the timing to be a lot more seamless. It'd be much more herky-jerky if it was a rigid kind of 90-degree thing. And so we're looking for smooth movements and smooth transitions between the stroke phases so that they can time them a lot more effectively and they can transition into them more effectively. And so again, a little bit rounding here, and then especially through the pull, it kind of gets rounded through the back as opposed to pulling straight back, because it allows to give up a little bit maybe of the pull, but it allows them to get a lot more by recovering smoothly into the next phase. And with freestyle, it's pretty similar to what we see in butterfly. So the arm pulls here, and that's the finish of the stroke. You can see the elbow is bent right here, and he never straightens it. And so that's to allow for a smooth transition out the back of the stroke into the recovery, and so they can just swing the arm around and back around to the next stroke. So if he wanted to, right here, he could probably finish the stroke and maybe get his hand all the way back down to his knee. But that's not really what happens. He keeps it bent and just kind of swings it around and makes it a lot more fluid. He's not giving up very much propulsion at that point, but he's gaining a lot by having an arm that's got some momentum and then swinging it around to the front. It's going to make things a lot easier. And so rather than telling swimmers to get everything out of the pull, it's more about getting enough out of the pull and then moving in to the next phase of the stroke. And you see the same thing in sprinters, even those that swim with straight arms. And obviously they're trying to get as much propulsion out of each stroke as they can. You can see elbow's still bent there, especially on the other side. You can see how it's bent here. It's bent. It's bent. It's not getting straightened out. And that's because they need the momentum, the arm, to swing it around into the front so that they can start creating propulsion again quicker and with less effort. And so while maybe they get a little bit more out of each stroke, by finishing the stroke, it's going to take more time to recover the arm, and they're going to get tired, which means the frequency is going to go down a lot, and that means they're going to slow down a lot. So especially here, smooth transitions in the back of the stroke, that's going to help them use a higher rate, and it's going to help them maintain that rate for even longer. So smooth transitions is really key in all aspects of the stroke cycle. By helping them kind of round out the different phases, they're going to be a lot more effective in transitioning from phase to phase. It's going to make each phase a little bit more effective, and more importantly, it's going to take a lot less energy, and that's going to allow them to sustain whatever level of swimming they can for even longer, and that's ultimately going to lead to better swimming and faster times. Hope that helps. Keep it simple.